It's a different answer in different parts of the world. Like if you grew up in a culture where placemaking was kind of just part of what everyone does, then it's a different role. To grow up in a more ancient culture based on what we call geomorphic patterns, you would be building upon the success of your village over time. Very famously, Italian villages are just densely saturated with gathering places. And so Italians are always out in those spaces interacting with each other and building community just organically. They're constantly learning more about each other and sharing stories. They're trapped on couches in isolation like we are. In that case, you would be building on a tradition of placemaking if you were to grow up in a place like that. And why that matters is their public health statistics are extremely low. Their public health issues are extremely low, and their rates of violence are also extremely low compared to ours. Our crime rates, our violence rates can be 10 times higher. And our public health issues related to the way that our communities work are just so intense that the issue is quite glaring. We don't tend to pay attention to an issue like this. This is the issue. Americans live in developments. They don't live in villages. We have to fly across the ocean to visit a place that has been created by the people who live there. And that would be a village where, you could never disintegrate living from working. But in the USA, people typically live somewhere in a zone, and they have to leave that zone to go to a work zone. What we discover if we look into why this is happening is that we live in a colonized landscape where all of the patterns are designed. So like in 1785, the essential pattern that we all inhabit across the continent was laid out on paper as a way to basically organize conquered territories. It wasn't just to say, okay, let's go out and colonize those territories. No, it was very specific. It was utilizing Roman colonial planning, which was not designed to build community. It was designed to organize extractive processes and regiment people, isolate them. The United States has the fewest number of community gathering places of all first world nations. We're exceptional in that sense. Like we are the most isolated so-called first world nation in the world, all nations, including similar places like Australia that have been laid out rapidly, or even Canada. Community development is kind of the antithesis of the goal of westward expansion, which was to, rapidly occupy territory, but not enable people to really talk to each other and have alternative ideas. And that's a much deeper subject that I'm happy to get into as much as you want today. But our project in city repair is to address that. And basically, this is the gist of it: to act like villagers in our own lives and to repurpose residual spaces, to dare to come together on a local level and practice our agency to transform right where we live. And we think that changes the world. And it certainly does change a lot of indicators, like public health statistics go through the roof through our work, and crime plummets because of our work. These are the most important things to our lives locally. But once you start doing this work, then you begin to realize that most of the just persistent, insolvable problems in the USA are happening in the void of our own creative agency in our own lives. Americans basically just subscribe to or submit to a set of design patterns that we don't even understand. And we go through our lives very frustrated, wondering what the meaning of life is, or we talk about getting outside of the box, and we don't really realize that we're literally living in these very strongly enforced containers, like of property lines, of rectangular or square properties, sort of all regimented and separated from each other. And then outside of our homes in the public space, we're told that we have no power locally with each other. That's very consistent across the country. You could say that colonialism is a vast conspiracy, and anybody who's not familiar with that story might think that, that you've gone off the deep end, but that's just because they really haven't paid attention to even high school history. We're talking about stuff that is right before our eyes that we've actually learned a lot about, and we haven't related our own lives to it because we don't really talk to each other, especially locally.